This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. Okay, welcome to the channel. First of all, if you want that preset that you just heard, that was a couple of captures of my Mesa Boogie Nomad behind me, the clean and the dirty. I've just put it into one preset. Leave a comment below, like the video or whatever, and hopefully there'll be a few of you Quad Cortex users out there that could find some use in that one, hopefully. Anyway, so the intent of this video is not to disparage Neural DSP or, you know, dunk on a thing. It's just to present a problem that I think also the Kemper has and also IK Multimedia have with ToneX. And the first, I think, modeling company or profiling company to tackle this will reap great rewards or something. Their reward will be in heaven. What are you talking about? Anyway, so first of all, I think to illustrate this problem, I'd like to present to you the problem of IRs. So if you don't know what an IR is, you probably do. An impulse response, basically, generally in the guitar world, an impulse response is of a cab with a microphone, and you shoot one of these at a time, essentially, right? And you end up with a little snapshot, which is what it would sound like if you captured an amp playing through this particular cabinet and microphone at this specific point. Now, if you've ever bought an IR pack, you know that basically what you end up having is multiples of this thing, and you could have a different mic, you could have different positions. There are lots of variables that end up meaning that you have a file system where you could have hundreds, if not thousands of IRs for a single cabinet, because you could have like 8 microphone options, you could have axis options, you could have position to and away from the cone and all this stuff. So that is the problem, right? That you could have a massive list of IRs, and for the user, it's not that easy to navigate that sort of thing. Lists in general, I don't think are an elegant solution. What Neural came up with is an elegant solution. So you see in the cab block, if I was to pull one up, essentially what this is doing is creating a user experience where you're navigating underneath the hood between hundreds, thousands of IRs, but you're doing it in a way that is far more efficient and far more representative of something in the real world. You know, you've got like a cab, you've got a microphone, you can change your microphone. That is an elegant solution to a problem of having hundreds, thousands of options, and it shows that there are solutions for this kind of problem. Now, in the same way, when you create a capture, this is a singular snapshot of an amp and a cab, a stomp box, or a combination of all these things at one moment in time with one set of settings, right? And when you create a capture in Neural or Kemper or Tonex, they are somewhat static. You might have some kind of generic gain options. You might have a generic bass, mid, treble, volume options. The Kemper has a few more of those sorts of things, but they are generic and are not tied to the actual amp model. So you're moving the gain around in some generic ways. You're moving the bass around in a set generic way, etc. Each profile, each capture is a static moment in time. Obviously, this is really great. The really great thing that I like about this capture stuff is that if I have a sound coming through, say the Fender Pro Reverb or the Mesa Boogie Mark III or the Mesa Boogie Nomad, I can quickly pull up the Quad Cortex. I just plug the microphone in, and in 5 minutes I'd have a capture of that particular tone, which would probably fool me in an A/B test. That's a really good thing, right? And that is the power of profiling, of modeling, of capturing, all this stuff. So Tonex is the latest thing that can do it without even being tied to hardware. Kemper has obviously been doing it for a decade or more, and I think Neural have done a pretty good job of capturing. I think a lot of people think that it's possibly a little bit better than the Kemper, certainly for higher gain tones. And I think some people even think that Tonex is a step beyond that. But anyway, so that's the beauty of the capture, the profiling process, right? Is that you can quickly take a snapshot of a signal chain. Here's where the problem arises. So say you have 2, 3, 4, even that many profiles or captures or settings on an amp that you want to capture. How do you then start to go about categorizing these things? And say you wanted to add in someone else's profiles, captures. So for instance, Rob Harris, guitarist for Jamiroquai, he's got some captures on the cloud now as well, and some presets that are really cool that you should maybe check out. But for instance, when you go into his capture, JMP Marsh 50 RH, it's at the moment, the capture thing doesn't really describe in a massively great way what it is that you're dealing with. You know, on the cloud, you've got tags and stuff like that. Now in Cores 2, they are upgrading this. I don't know when that's going to be, presumably soon, because it is in beta, however you want to say it. In that, they're going to add some extra things. In the metadata, there's going to be a gain thing. It's going to automatically suggest and give you an indication of how much gain that actual capture has. You're going to be able to allocate a certain icon to it, which is useful. So it could be either an amp, it could be an amp and cab, it could be a combo, it can be a stomp, it can be a cab only. So you're going to have an indicator and also, you know, like a data filtering system where you could say, well, this capture is designed to be used with a cab or without, or already has a cab baked in, or this is a pedal capture. That's a really good step forward. But also Tonex does that sort of thing too. And I think it's an important part of moving beyond it just being long lists of sort of the Wild West capturing of 2021 to 2022. I think that's a good step forward. What I think needs to be the next big step forward that any of these companies might take would be to consolidate more than one capture into an overall thing. Like I've said with the IR thing, that is a way of organizing a list of hundreds, maybe thousands even, of individual snapshots, IRs, and consolidating it into one smaller, more user-friendly, more skeuomorphic experience. At the moment, no modeling company, no profiling company, no guitar gig company has actually managed to tackle this idea that, yes, you could have this really cool capture profile technology, but beyond that, how do we improve the user experience with it? And I think that is the next big step, right? Where instead of just having singular captures, you could maybe consolidate them. So maybe you have a Tube Screamer capture session that you do, and they're all from the same user, and so, you know, they're all the same unit. And so what are you going to do to make it so that instead of having 10 individual sort of things with different settings, or 20 or 30, depending on how detailed these guys go into doing this, Instead of that, you have one sort of overall skin, and you're kind of using the thing more like in real life, where you're manipulating settings that are actually tied to a real world thing. And maybe that would involve, I don't know what this would be, but some sort of way that you could blend captures and blend between them. And maybe you had, you know, if you capture on certain settings and then you capture on other settings, and somehow the piece of technology sort of sorts these things together. I feel like that is, or something like that, is going to be the next step in profiling and capturing, because where we're at the moment, I think, is going to lead to quickly, and you see this already if you go into the cloud, even if there are sort of hundreds, a couple of hundred, 500 active users in the Quad Cortex cloud, if they're all generating captures, what you're going to quickly get is a really, really long list. And it's going to be really difficult, I think, to manage as a user. And as it is at the moment, you know, if I go into my captures, it's not necessarily super easy to differentiate. And we do know that Cores is going to change some of this, Cores 2 or Core 2, I don't know how they're pronouncing that. But you know, as soon as you have people like Worship Tutorials or Tone Junkie, if they start to step into this space in a paid way, you're going to have an exponentially bigger problem, because you're going to have, you know, 30, 40 captures of the same amp. Maybe they might even do the same amps between them. And so it's going to be really difficult, I think, to differentiate between these things. So I think the next big leap forward in profiling capturing technology will, I think, have to enable a way that you can consolidate many snapshots into one, so that you have a better user experience. I don't know if you feel the same way about that. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. I'm just presenting what I think is the user experience problem, and maybe the next big thing that either Kemper, NeuroDSP, or Amplitube could solve, or someone else even. Once they solve that, I think then we're kind of the next leap forward into this profiling capturing thing being a thing. Because at the moment, if you just pull up a model of an amp, that is actually quite an elegant solution for having thousands of potential settings organized in a way that represents the real world. And that is kind of what people liked about NeuroDSP in the first place, right? Is that you've got these really cool photorealistic amps that you can manipulate settings on. You've also then got the cab section in their plugins, which again is a really neat way to organize loads of IRs, and then pedals that look like the real thing. It's a skeuomorphic experience, and I think that is what people initially were drawn into the NeuroDSP plugins for. When you get into lists, and lots of lists of IRs and lots of lists of potential captures profiles, I think then it starts to step back from being what it was that NeuroDSP got to the dance in the first place for. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and again, if you want that particular preset, also go check out Rob Harris, guitarist from Jamiroquai. He's got a podcast which is really cool, and he's using the Quad Cortex on tour at the moment. But anyway, yeah, you can grab that preset from the cloud. If you want to leave a comment, I'll upload it. But yeah, I'd be interested to know your thoughts on that, and if you can see there being a solution. Is someone going to be able to capture the sweep of a tone knob or something like that? Because I feel like if you can consolidate all of those disparate captures into one sort of collection of, say, 5, 10, 15, then you'd have a much better experience, I think. And then say your Worship Tutorials capture set could then be in one sort of neat little user package, and you could, you know, dial up the gain if you needed to, or change between them in some more user-friendly way than just going through a list. Let me know your thoughts.